Hello, it's Anthony Chadwick from the Webinar Vet, welcoming you to another episode of VETchat, the UK's #1 veterinary podcast. And I'm thrilled today to have Emma Short on the line with me from Bailey's Horse Feeds. Emma, tell me a little bit about the company. I know we know Bailey's very well, but there will be people listening to the podcast who perhaps don't. Tell us a little bit about the history and what you get up to.
Yeah, well, it's quite exciting this year because it's our 40th anniversary from when we were founded, which was back in 1982 by George Knowles and Paul Venner. So they're our two founders. We're a Essex-based company, so we're based in the north of Essex, roughly about 14 miles east, I think, of Stansted Airport, can be quite convenient. So we've been going for quite a long time on the same site now. So
And
yeah.
you obviously also produce the food there. You have your own mill.
We do, yeah. We're quite unique in that fact, in that we have our own mill at head office, which is fantastic for us because it means that if we have any issues or we want to go and have a look at the feed that we're manufacturing, we can just wander over into the mill. We can chat to all our production managers and staff, etc., within, and on the premises. And it gives you, I suppose, more flexibility. Enables us to supply and keep up with demand as well, which is ideal.
So you're producing the food, you're obviously then bagging it. And as you said,
Everything.
obviously it gives you the ability to know if you need to up production, you can. If you need to push it down a bit, you can, or you're short of ingredient. You've got that much more control in the
We do.
manufacturing process, don't you?
We do. We do everything on site. So we have our nutritionists, and we have 5 nutritionists based on site. We have all our production team. We have our marketing teams, our sales team. So we're all in one area. And absolutely, if there's something that we haven't had delivered, or we're having issues with supply with a particular ingredient, for example, we're all there to come together and to collaborate and resolve the situation. So it makes life a lot easier, and also ensures that we can be as consistent
Yeah.
as we can be, and also as productive as we can be. So as you say, we can increase production if needed. We quite often run our mill at night in very busy times, so we're running 24/7. And obviously during quieter times that obviously comes back down. So we're quite lucky.
That's brilliant. And I would expect that during the pandemic, everybody had much more time for their horses. So maybe you were even busier than you expected with the lockdown and so on.
We were. Our production team were flat out for quite a few weeks, and we were running the mill, I believe, 24/7 for several weeks, including weekends. And they were absolutely fantastic through that time because many of the guys that work out in the mill and our production team didn't have much time off to try and keep up with supply and demand. And I think that worked in our favour, really, at a time when people were trying to buy in more feed because they were worried, obviously, about whether they would be able to get hold of stuff, etc.
Yeah.
So, it was a very busy time for us, and to be honest, it hasn't really petered off at the moment, which is great for us, and hopefully that will continue.
It reminds me of the Beatles song. We really at some times, and we were very busy during the pandemic as well. 8 days a week would be useful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But Emma, you've obviously, I can't believe it, but you tell me you've been with the company for 20 years,
I
came from college
know.
with a Bachelor of Science in equine science, obviously now one
Yeah.
of the nutritionists at the business. Tell us a little bit about the equine science degree, because I think at the time it was quite a new qualification. I think it's much more common now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly was. Yeah, it was very new. There was only 9 of us, I think, on my course when I was studying,
Yes.
which was quite nice, actually.
You got
um,
to know everybody pretty quickly.
yeah, absolutely. And I had a real interest in nutrition, and from a clinical side, so concentrated a lot on modules around nutrition, biochemistry, etc. And was very lucky that Bailey's were looking for somebody as I was coming to the end of my final year. So I was very lucky to get the job. So yeah, 2002 I started. straight out of uni,
Yes.
and have been there ever since. So
Well,
yes,
I
time.
hope after 20 years you've been given a watch or something. Cut
Not
words.
not yet, no, but maybe they'll hear
It's a
this and
surprise.
yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
surprise for you. I think one of the things that impresses me about Bailey's, obviously, we've known each other for quite a while with your sponsorship and the webinars that you do with us. It is very much how you go in depth. You obviously sell the food that you sell, but you go on to stud farms, you go on to uh, other yards, and you're advising not only on your food, but you're also analysing forage and pasture, because it's so important that we have the right mix of foods, isn't it? With horse food, that the grass and the hay is also a very important part of the diet.
Completely. I mean, if you think about it, the horse is, a fiber eater. That's the biggest part of their diet, and therefore provides, a lot of the nutrients and energy, etc. And that has a huge impact on what we are going to recommend. So the forage is really paramount, and we do look into it, in depth. We where it's viable, we look at analysing hay, haylage, grass, and we have done, for a long time. We have a big database where we collect all our data and sort of,
Hmm.
look at the trends that we've seen over the years. And that enables us to see what's missing in the diet. So quality protein, for example, may be short or inconsistent. If certainly when you're looking at things like grass, it's never a constant. It's sort of
Yes,
up and down.
varies. Yeah.
So our job as nutritionists, is to ensure that we try and keep that consistency, and we're counteracting basically any shortfalls that you're going to have within the forage, because we know that, for example, through our databases, that things like zinc and copper are always low, even
Hmm.
with a horse that's at rest. So it's trying to make sure that we're providing the right feed advice, the right product advice, to ensure that that horse is as healthy, from a weight perspective, but also from a condition point of view as well. And a lot of us are all, we're all horse owners, or,
Yeah.
have an interest. And our main key is to make sure that we are educating, and providing the right advice for the owner to ensure that that horse is
Hmm.
as healthy, as it possibly can be. So that is what we're all about, basically.
And it's also, as you say, looking for those mineral shortages, because that they can have really deleterious effects on horses if they're low on zinc or calcium or magnesium or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah, certainly. And I think people tend to forget about the horse, that, they think at rest, or those that are in light levels of work, forage alone is enough. And a lot
Mm.
of the time, from a calorie or an energy or protein perspective, yes, they are, but it's those micronutrients that are quite often
Yeah, missing.
missing. And okay, for a short amount of time with them being deficient, you may not have any issues, or see any issues, but long term, as you say, yes, there
Yes.
can certainly be sort of, problems that can occur.
I love the ethos of Bailey's, because obviously you can see from that you're already interested in educating the stud farmer, or the individual horse owner, but it's how you also work. Sometimes I know you go on to yards, with the vet and with the blacksmith, so you're working collaboratively as a team. And I think it's so important. Sometimes we can all compete against each other, on what does the vet know, etc., and there
Yeah.
can be fights between the team, whereas I think collaborating together is really powerful, isn't it?
It's really key. A lot of horse owners, obviously have their vets, going
Mm.
into the yard, and they are looking towards their vets to give them good advice, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But absolutely, you're right. Sometimes there can be a little bit of conflict with what we know and what we don't know, and I think it's really key for us to push that education and ensure that our owners, whether they've got one horse or pony, or whether they've got a yard full, or they're competing or breeding, I think it's really important to come together so that you're collaborating together to give the same advice, so that if you are advising on weight loss, for example, that you're
Mhm.
all you're all saying the
Yeah.
same thing, and not having conflicting advice, because I think that's where the issues then becoming,
Yeah,
become a
and
problem.
clients get confused, and often if they're confused, they do nothing because if they're having
Absolutely.
three different pieces of advice, it's very difficult, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and who do you believe? So,
Yeah,
yeah, so
exactly.
we do a lot of that, and actually it works very well. And the results that we see by working together as a team with the vets and farriers, etc., is great. You get much better results, and actually, from a longevity point of view, not only with the animal's health and well-being, but with the owner knowing what they have to do and trust. They obviously trust you when you're all coming together, which is a real key thing.
Well, trust is at the center of everything, isn't it? Because if
Hmm.
people don't trust you, they don't buy your product, do
Of
they?
course not. No, absolutely. So it's crucial.
I love that, that you're very much a purpose-centered company, and I can see that obviously education is the key to what you do. You're obviously doing it, on individual levels, going into yards. Obviously, you've been very supportive of the webinar vet with educating horse vets about nutrition as well. But I know you've been involved in Better Beginnings and also lecturing at Hartbury, which is obviously one of the agricultural colleges. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about those two things.
Yeah, I mean, Better Beginnings is something that I'm very passionate about because I do, I and the company do quite a lot from a stud point of view. So we work with the British Breeding Futuratory as well. So we have an involvement with that, which we have done for the last 20 years. And the Better Beginnings, run by the British Horse Foundation, is looking at sort of improving management and welfare for the young horse, basically from conception up until 2 years. So that's what we're looking at the moment, and just making sure that we can put the right processes in to ensure
Mm.
correct management from the beginning, and obviously that builds longevity and obviously better health and well-being, obviously for the foal, the brood mare, etc. as well. So yeah, so that's a great thing that we're doing at the moment, and very much involved in.
And also with Hartbury College, you're actually giving
Sorry,
lectures to the
yes, I couldn't
students, aren't
remember
you?
what else you said.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, Hartbury, we've been working with Hartbury for a little while now. And yeah, that involves sort of doing lectures with the students, advising students, so those that have their animals on site as well. So we will pop in and look at forage analysis, make sure that they're on the correct diets for what they're doing. But also we are involved in some of their nutrition related research projects as well. So we've been working with some undergrad students. We've also got some MSc students this year as well that we're working with certain studies. So that's all very exciting as well. So it's not only just educating the students, but also they actually help to educate us by doing research as well that we're interested in. So it kind of works both ways.
Collaboration again. That's
Yeah,
our key word in
absolutely.
today's podcast. Uh, Interestingly, despite all this great nutrition, across the board, horses, dogs, cats, humans, we have a bit of an obesity crisis, don't we? Obesity is an issue, across
Yeah,
all species.
yeah.
Um, do you think it's because obviously I'm not an expert on horses, but do you think it's a big problem in horses, or do horses manage their weight better than maybe a dog or a human would do?
Yeah, that's that's a tough one to answer. I do think it's a problem, yeah, and I don't think it's been a recent thing. I think it's been a problem for probably quite some time. I think it's maybe more so recently that we've, as an industry, I think sort of maybe recognised it and maybe have actually started to come together to try and
Mm.
resolve the problems that we're facing.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue is that people get used to seeing their animals looking in a certain way, and
Mm.
they're not necessarily doing it to be unkind, but they just maybe
Yes.
can't. It's difficult, isn't it, when you're seeing your horse every day? It's very difficult to be objective about it. So forages, grazing patterns have changed even in the 20 years that I've been in, working in the industry. And
Yeah.
so I think it's really important that, again, we all come together as a collaborative approach to try and resolve the problem. So I do think it's an issue. I think it's something that we do certainly need to be involved in, and we do a lot. I mean, we have We have a equine weight loss program or booklet that we send out. We can give to vets. We have booklets and things that we can send out to sort of owners. We've sat on things like the equine obesity sort of round table, and sort of, so we are quite involved in that area. So I do think it's something that we need to continue to look at, and trying to continue to educate our owners properly. But it's not the only thing that we see. I mean, obesity is a big issue, absolutely, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah.
There are, horses do still need to put weight on in some instances,
Yes.
etc.,
Yeah.
etc. So it's, it's sort of looking at the bigger picture, I suppose, isn't it?
And I know, part of that is obviously horses are pretty big, so it's difficult to weigh them. But I know you very much are a believer in weight scales and condition scoring, and it's
Yeah,
having people educated to recognise, actually, because I see it all the time with Labradors. People
yeah,
come in, and when you see a Labrador that's in its correct condition, oh, that dog's very thin. No, actually, your dog is
yeah.
very fat.
Absolutely. Yeah, they haven't got the perception. Yeah, we have a
Yes,
number of weigh bridges that we use. But it's really key, I think. Weight is a useful tool to have. But
yes,
what it doesn't tell you the amount of fat that horse is carrying or muscle.
yeah,
It can be useful, but actually you can weigh that, the same horse over, say, sort of over a course of, say, 6 months or a year. They may be the same weight, but actually it's really key that we're looking at body condition score as
yeah.
well.
It's the whole
It
picture.
is, yeah. And actually, I'd probably say the body condition score is more important actually than
Yes,
the weight. The weight almost is a figure. So you
yeah,
could have a horse that's 500 kilos is actually obese because it's carrying
yeah,
too much fat, and it's got a,
yeah,
condition score of, say, 8. Whereas that same horse could possibly have the same weight at 500 kilos, but actually have a good condition score of 5, but it's got more muscle and obviously the right fat content. So yeah, weight bridges are fantastic and they're useful, but body condition score actually, I think, is
yeah.
more useful to actually determine what the horse is actually like.
Well, I remember Johnny Wilkinson, the famous rugby player, when they were looking at his BMI, they were saying he's obese,
Yeah. uh,
which is the excuse I use if people try and tell me I'm carrying a bit of weight. Is no, I'm just like Johnny Wilkinson.
I like it.
Um, I have to, just as a little caveat, I tend not to say to clients, "No, your dog is just very fat." I don't usually say that, so that was
Yeah.
just said for effect, just in case people listening are worried. I'm not quite so abrupt as that. Um, Fantastic, all the work that you're doing, obviously, to help the animals. Those of you who listen to the podcast will know I'm a little bit obsessed with the environment, because if we screw the environment up, then we probably won't be able to keep the animals. So I'm always sort of testing people out. And I must admit, I think just looking at some of the stuff that you are doing, I think it's definitely an A. I'm not going to give an A star, but
Thanks.
some fantastic stuff with the solar panels for your factory, which, of
Yeah,
course, it is a great thing to do, but it's almost becoming a very sensible economic thing now
it
with the
is.
energy crisis, isn't it, as well, Emma?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had solar panels for quite a long time now, actually, but we have recently installed new new solar panels. And I mean, you can imagine that, when we're during our very busy times, we're manufacturing a lot, and obviously, yeah, our
Mm,
energy bills are going to be incredibly high. So yeah, so it's a win-win, I suppose, from a sustainability point of view, but also
yeah,
also from an economical point of view as well.
and I know, obviously, there's a lot of packaging goes on, and we worry
Yeah.
about plastic packaging and things. A lot of your packaging is actually in paper, isn't it, as well?
Absolutely, a majority of it is. We use paper sacks, which is recyclable, so that's very important for us. And it's all UK based as well. So we try and use as much as we can in the UK, or as locally as we possibly can, to avoid sort of air miles and all that kind of
Yeah,
thing. We do still have some products, unfortunately, in packaging, and we are really working hard to try and, you know, remove that as much as possible. We've just introduced our paper refill bags for our tasty treats, which can then be used or put into the buckets,
Mm.
which are quite often also repurposed as sort of feed buckets and that kind of thing. But yeah, we've always been a paper bag company as such,
Yes.
but we're trying to do better and moving away from the plastic as much as possible.
Well, I must admit, I was at Beaver Congress recently in Liverpool, where we're based, and when you go to a small animal conference, and obviously the giveaways, trying to be more and more careful with the stuff that you give away at stands.
Yes.
There's a lot of plastic stuff in small animal conferences and in non-vet conferences that I've been to. What I was most what was probably most ubiquitous at the equine conference was plastic buckets, because you need them for the water and you need
Yeah.
them for the feed as well, don't you? So
Yeah.
they're always a useful
Always
giveaway.
needed somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, where do you see the company developing maybe in the next few years? How do you see it developing, across areas?
I think really our main focus, I would say, at the moment, is from an educational point of view. I
Mm.
think we're really trying to push education as much as we can, um, so that people understand why we're recommending what we're recommending, why we manufacture what we manufacture. Um, and I think that's a big thing for us, is that we want to make
Mm.
sure that not only the end, just the one horse owner, but also those that have big yards, etc., performance horses breeding, that they understand um, what what nutrition is, and how it can improve their health and well-being of their overall animals. I think, and
Yeah,
sustainability, I think, is going to be a big thing, obviously with the economic climate as it is as well.
yes,
There may be a shift possibly with more branded products, maybe onto those that may be um, slightly more economical. But again, it's trying to ensure that we're providing that education for people to make an informed
yeah.
choice on what they're doing, and it's the right choice for the health and well-being really of their animals.
Well, I don't think, Emma, there's any doubt that, as a purpose-centered company, you're probably already scoring pretty highly on both of those. Your educational material is fantastic. The way you're supporting people like Hartbury and the British Horse Association,
Thank you.
plus all the work that you're doing on sustainability. Thank you so much for all that you do for the animals, but also for the planet as well. So
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. This has been Anthony Chadwick from the Webinar Vet, and this has been another episode of Vet Chat. Bye bye.